Welcome again. Um, I suggest we start slowly. My name is Alexandra Atalla, and I'm working with UNDP's Food and Agricultural Commodity Systems Community, known as the FACS community. And today, as part of our program of events, we are happy to host this workshop on cultivating an innovation mindset. We will have two more sessions. So this workshop is spanning over 3 modules. So next week, same day, same time, and the following Tuesday as well. And hopefully by the end of this workshop, you will gain some tools to navigate complexity, strengthen leadership and resilience, and explore some new approaches to collaborative problem solving. With this, I would like to warmly welcome Ben Elers, who is the founder of the Brain Innovation Project. Ben has worked with UNDP and the food systems team for several years now and offered multiple workshops on agility, resilience, and innovation derived from our modern understanding of cognitive and neuroscience. And I wanted to mention here that in addition to this workshop, Ben will be offering one-on-one coaching sessions. So for those of you who will be interested to as well embark on this type of learning journey and this format, there will be an opportunity, and we will be sharing more information at the end of the session today and also in the emails that we will be sending after the workshop. So please stay tuned. With this, and before handing over to Ben to deep dive and give us an overview about the topic and the theme of the workshop and what we will be doing over the 3 modules. We will run a very quick Mentimeter. This is just for, you can treat it as an icebreaker just to, kick off this workshop. Alejandra will share in the chat box the instructions, how you can join the Mentimeter. You have 3 ways to do it. You can either go on menti.com and type the code, or you can scan the QR code that you will see in a second on your screen. Or you can also access the Mentimeter through the link that you see in the chat. So I will give you a few seconds. So you have the time to join it. I can already see that there are 6 colleagues who have joined, 8. So maybe let's wait until we have at least half of you with us. And the Mentimeter will have 3 questions. We will be asking about 3 aspects: work, life, and the world. And this is an anonymous, of course, Mentimeter poll. So don't worry, like, the answers will not be associated, to names. So just for you to feel comfortable that, this is anonymous. And hello, everyone. I see that as well. Some of you have typed, like, in the chat box, introduce yourself. So we have colleagues from Cambodia, from Italy, from Indonesia, South Africa, Nigeria, Niger. Welcome, everyone. Okay, I think we have enough colleagues, so we can go to the first question. So it's an open question. Name one area in your work where you really need new solutions or like innovation? Okay, so we have a few answers already. Complex multi-stakeholder collaboration, finding high-end clients, scaling, agriculture, policy coherence, farmer resilience, interdisciplinary collaboration, again, collaboration and partnerships, food systems. Yes, related to your work context, because I see a question in the chat box. Climate resilience and agriculture. So I see some threads like around more generic policy coherence or very specific exactly to food systems, farmer resilience, agriculture, and also all the area that's related to collaborations, partnerships. Perfect. Thank you very much. Let's go to the second question. So the second one is name one area in your life where you would like new solutions or, more innovation. And again, this is an anonymous poll, so we cannot link the answers to the names. But what would be, an area in your personal life where you would like to have new solutions? Yes, so we have already some answers. So more optimism in the face of the world challenges, conflict resolution, time management, adaptive management, relationships, sustainable livelihoods, sustainable income, forest conservation, finding effective systemic ways to get tasks done, peace. Interesting as well, threads, and also as I make parallels to previous workshops that we've held with Ben in the beginning of the year, I also see similar answers emerging. For example, with time management, more optimism, peace, like conflict resolutions. So those are things that usually emerge. Thank you. So now we will go to the third and the last question. So name one area in the world where we really need new solutions, innovation. So that's more generic. So that's not particularly related to your work or your personal life, but more like in general. So again, we have a few answers already: building mutual understanding, understanding each other, moving beyond us versus them, peace, democracy. Yeah, so those are all like one bucket. Then we had climate action. We had climate change, political reform, sustainable financing. So again, I see some common threads that also usually emerge when we ask this type of question, social change. Thank you everyone for your answers, for participating in this Mentimeter. And with this, I will hand over to Ben. Yes, over to you, Ben. I hope you all, enjoy today's session and as well stay with us for the next two modules.
Thank you, Alexandra, and it's a pleasure to be with you all, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evenings for you. I assume you're there. I mean, I understand that sometimes internet connections are slow or you're sort of like having to do something else at the same time. But if you are able to turn on your cameras, then that would be fantastic. But if not, that's also fine as well. So as Alex said, my name is Ben Elers. My background is in development for many years, but for the last few years, I've been working more around neuroscience, social change, and how you combine these two things and can leverage some of the astonishing insights which have been developed over the last few years about how our brains work for social change. Innovation. We've seen from the Mentimeter responses, we're in desperate need for some new ideas in the world at the moment, perhaps more than ever. Climate change, artificial intelligence, what all that means, conflict resolution. We need new ideas. Right? And when we think about new ideas, we have to, it's helpful to understand how we think and how we come up with the ideas that we already have, right? Because once we understand the mechanisms or the ways we think, that gives us new entry points to actually to not just come up with new solutions, but actually to take a deep dive into how we actually think. Right? And this is really what this workshop is about. It seems like 3 modules, right? This is a long time for you to dedicate to this, and I'm honored and very grateful that you're here. It's not a lot of time. Altogether, we'll be spending 6 hours together, right? Which is less than a day's work, and we've got a lot to cover. So, and a lot of what we talk about, it will not be entirely new for people, hopefully, and hopefully intuitively things will make a lot of sense. And we are going to be covering a lot in the next these three modules. And one thing really important, you don't have to remember everything. Right? The most important thing is to follow the overall story, right? Because you can always watch the replays or find out more about the details. So really think about more the overall package rather than trying to remember every single detail. And with that, let me just give an overview of what we're actually going to do. And I should actually, before I do that, I should just say, I get excited about this stuff. I speak quickly sometimes as I get more and more excited. Just jump in if I'm going too fast or if you have any questions. Don't, let's not make this too formal. This is something which has to be useful for you. So you don't have to worry about, okay, when are the questions and answers going to be? Just jump in. All right. And that's fine. So what we're going to do, just in terms of framing, just to be clear, when we're talking about innovation mindsets, we're not talking about thematic stuff here. We're not talking about integrated landscape management or water management. And we're also not talking about innovation in terms of processes of innovation in organizations such as design thinking. Here, we're talking, all of those are important things, by the way. It's just not this workshop, right? Here, we're talking about our mindsets, right? How things work, how we have innovation mindsets, or how we can cultivate these, right? And so if you're expecting a technical discussion around integrated landscape management, you're probably in the wrong place, right? And that's probably our fault for not having described what the workshop's about. So please don't expect much discussion around specific issues, although it will come up mainly in the third module, okay? So just a little bit about the plan. We're going to be talking about this framework in future. So you don't have to remember it now. We're going to be coming back to it again and again and again and again and again and again and again in different ways. There's not going to be one time where we present it and this is it. We're going to be circling back to it all the time. And I'm not going to discuss it now because we will come to it. Okay. So in this module today, we will be talking about this framework, which is essentially a lens as to how to view things. In module 2, we're going to be focusing on this part, which most of you probably like, what the hell is that? Right? But it will become clear. because this is so important and something which is normally forgotten. Right? And yet it's, for me, I think it's perhaps the key leverage point of all of this, internal state. And in module 3, we will be talking about how we actually use the framework. Right? So today is more of a me talking. Sorry, that's hopefully that's not, you're going to find it not too painful for me with the me talking part. Next week is going to be extraordinarily experiential, and I hope for some of you transformational. I think it's really quite exciting stuff. And then the third, we're talking about maybe more conventionally about work planning, how we use the framework in an everyday context. Jump in if you have any questions or comments. Okay. I'm not monitoring the chat as I'm talking, so Alejandro or Alex, maybe you can let me know if there's something which I need to respond to. Today, what we're doing, we're going to be talking initially about framing and embodied cognition. So there's going to be quite a long lead up as to what the framework actually is. We're not just going to jump into the framework and say, this is the framework, accept it or don't, and this is how we use it. We're actually going to be building up quite slowly as to what it is, because I think that's important. And then we're going to be moving on to some neuroscience stuff, about how we make up world models and our predictive brain. We don't need to understand what this is now. And in a sense, this is the whole message of today, right? Is we like to work on the basis of certainty and what we know and our expertise. But actually, the key to innovation or adaptability is embracing what we don't know. Okay, this is in a sense the whole purpose of today. And 2 hours might be a long time to say that when you can say it in 30 seconds, but there's more to it than this. It's not just a simple, oh yeah, we need to look for what we don't know. That it's quite a fundamental part of how we work. Okay, any questions? No. Okay. And also, just one last thing is that this framework, it's scale free. We're going to be talking mainly about individuals, but the same principles hold true whether it's communities or food systems as a whole. So because we have a limited time, and we could easily do this workshop in person over a week, right? But we're covering this in 6 hours online, so which has its limitations. We're going to be talking mainly about individuals, but always bear in mind that this is also related to communities, food systems, countries, any group, because it's the same principles. Okay. So what is innovation? Well, just a little bit of framework. We all know innovation's about new things. And it's about the new idea, method, or device, or creativity. But the key thing is that innovation is also about the introduction of something. It's not just creative thinking. It's about actually trying to bring some changes into the world. And the idea is that it's not just about new and different, but it's also better. So I can innovate and I can come to work every day standing on my head. All right, that's certainly novel and innovative, but it's not very useful. All right, so it's the idea of it's better. Now, whether or not you think robots in the future are better is another thing, but it's this notion of the future. And innovation is there's whole university courses and books, I mean, theories around innovation. We're talking here about mindset, right? And I don't want to go into too much detail about what mindset is because there's a lot of disagreement, or not disagreement, but it's a vague term, right? But it's this notion of the patterns that people internalize into their lives, all right? Beliefs, attitude, paradigms, worldviews. But two things which are going to come up again and again here, very important. We don't just have one mindset. We have lots and lots and lots of mindsets, or mindsets with lots of components. Right? I mean, some of you maybe are blessed with having a single mindset and you're very coherent as people and everything makes sense and you're, consistent in terms of what you do and think. I'm not. I don't know many people who are, to be honest. Right? And actually embracing this diversity and this complexity is often a key to innovation. Right? And also that a mindset is something which is both stable, we will see, but it's also changeable, right? Because there's long, slow underlying patterns in mindsets, but there's also parts which change. And even these long, stable underlying parts of mindsets can sometimes change in a few seconds. You have an encounter in your life which changes everything. But generally, our deep-seated beliefs are much slower to change and to evolve. Right? So it's not a science what a mindset is. And if some psychologist tries to tell you that there is a science, clear definition of exactly what a mindset is, don't believe them. All right, it's a construction. So an innovation mindset, putting the two together. All right. This is a non-formal version. This is my wording, right? Don't worry about the details, but it's just to get an idea of it. So it's the internalization of the beliefs, habits, and mental models or world models which generate new and better ways of doing things. All right. So it's not just an innovation mindset isn't just the way you do things, but it's the way you internalize it into almost every aspect of your life. And again, I say it again, any comments, things which don't make sense, just jump in. Okay. So I just want to move on to this. About laying the groundwork here, or laying the ground as to what we're meaning by the innovation mindset. Embodied, embedded in active cognition. Probably most of you or many of you are familiar with these terms. If you're not, that's fine. But we will come to it. Because this framework it's not supposed to just be a theoretical framework or construction, but it's actually an attempt of being built and grounded in how we actually work. The bigger picture, the long arm of life. I would like you to all to hold your hands out like this. Right, hold your hands out, stretch, and imagine that the world started here, right, at your shoulder. And today, what is it? Tuesday, the 2nd of September, 2025 is here on your fingertips. Right? Where do you think humans come into the picture? Right, so here's today, and here's the beginning of life, or here's the creation of the earth. Right, where do humans come into the picture? Go on, be brave. Wrist, elbow. Go on, anything else? Somewhere around the nails. So here, fingers. If you gave yourself a manicure, any of you have manicures? No? Humans have gone. We're that recent, right? You shave your fingernail. Humans, cognition, UNDP, agriculture, it's all gone, right? We are dealing with incredibly recent phenomenon here. We're part of a much, much, much bigger story of life. And here, just to put it into another perspective, if you think of the Earth in 24 hours, the first simple life started about 4 o'clock in the morning. Unfortunately, this keeps on changing, and actually, it seems that life it began even earlier. But until 1:30 in the afternoon, all there was single-celled organisms, right? Bacterias. This slide was done, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. As I say, our knowledge is expanding, so it actually started earlier, but it's the same principles. It wasn't until 10 to 9 in the evening, right, that the first multicellular life, small kind of like worm-like creatures evolved. It wasn't until about 5 to midnight, 5 seconds before midnight, 5 seconds before midnight that the first humans came. Right? It's so recent. And the point of saying this is not only that is it awe-inspiring, but whenever I think about that, but it's also means that we have to locate ourselves in the process of life if we want to understand stuff. So this workshop, and it will make sense hopefully as to where we're going and why I'm saying this in a minute. We'll come to we'll circle to the framework. Is that life is essentially living organisms, whether it's a single-celled bacteria or a human, right, are pursuing goals. And you pursue goals by maintaining the internal environment. It has to stay healthy, alive. The internal environment of a bacteria or a human has to be maintained and repaired, and you need to act in the external environment. Right? That's the two basic processes. In other words, agents, things, living organisms adapt, right? And throughout evolutionary history, this is in their behavior and their anatomy, right? They evolve, something develops the ability to poison other things as a means of defending against predators, etc., right? And they aspire towards biological goals, right? This is all life does this. This is the basic process of life. This isn't theoretical, this is descriptive, right? This isn't some new framework, it's like it's what life does, right? It's what life is. Okay. And then humans come along with the nails and we go and mess it all up. And we put on cognitive goals, all right? Self-determined sort of like things. We make it all much more complicated. But we haven't actually escaped the processes of life, right? We're still doing the same things, apart from our goals have expanded and changed. Right? Agents adapt and aspire. And this is really important, just to ram this home, is that we saw that our existence is based on much longer processes, and we still we live so much in our thoughts and strategic frameworks and plans and education and work and life and thinking and whatever cognitive thing, that we forget that it's all based on the biological machinery, which we've repurposed. We haven't replaced it, we've repurposed it. So bacteria make sense of their environment by sensing things. We give meaning, right? Animals forage for resources. We forage for knowledge. It's the same processes that we're using, right? They're not separate processes, even in our brains. Pain, your body heals when you get an injury. It's the same areas in our brain which feel physical pain as with mental pain. It's the same thing. When we change perspectives, an animal will see changing perspectives means looking at something in a different way. We will see this in the next module. It's actually, when you look at different points of view, you're using the same mechanisms. And this is interesting. Bad food, bad politicians. It's exactly the same area in the brain, right? If you have a bad egg and you gag on it, it's the same area in your brain when you feel disgust at a politician of your choice, right? Whoever you choose to feel disgust at. And the point is that this not only explains a lot of the underlying mechanisms, but if we're ignoring all of this, then we're just living in our cognitive world, which is a tiny fraction of what there is to us. So we're getting to the framework in a minute, right? Our brains are embedded. They're embedded in our cognition is embedded in the world around us. It only exists in relation to things, right? We're so wrapped up in our sense of ourself and who we are and etc., right? But our cognition only exists in relation to the world around us, right? Our brains are within us. They're physical flesh and blood organisms. They don't exist in some independent, even though our thoughts might seem like they're independent, right? They're physically embodied within us, our brains, not connected, but part of. And also, very important for us, our brains didn't evolve in order to attend workshops organized by the facts community or do crosswords or watch Netflix movies. They evolved in order to act within the world and also to modify our bodies. Okay, does this make any sense? Any interesting, boring, irrelevant? Anybody there?
We have a comment. Very interesting from Brigitte. And some thumbs up.
Okay, good. Right, it's good to know. I have to ask this because just to know that people are actually there, right? So all this is saying is, so remember, this cognition, this cognitive aspect, right, which probably is what mainly we think of as different to the rest of nature, is so recent and builds on the rest. And this is what this framework is, right? It's not something separate or philosophical. It's merely the cognitive layer onto the basic processes of life. So here, our agency is basically, yeah, our sense of the space of change. It's not very good wording, perhaps. Our belief in our capacity to make choices and take independent action and control in our lives. Right? It's a cognitive thing. It's about our sense of. It's not about actual physical things. It's about our beliefs, our world models, our beliefs in what we can do and what we think we're capable of. Right? The direction and drivers are no longer just biological. They're like our goals of what we want to do, or who we want to be. Do we want to self-actualize? Do we want to be agents of change? Do we want to spend more times with our families, where our priorities are? These are things which are generally not available to bacteria or dogs. Maybe it's not an on-off thing. It's a scale, right? And adaptability is this is where the rubber hits the road in terms of the innovation, because this is like our interface with the real world. It's where we learn and act, whether we can adjust or evolve, but proactively in response to changing circumstances. But the key thing is, and all of this, and I'm not going to talk too much about this at the moment, is determined by our is influenced by our physiological and psychological internal state. But these things are all part of a system, right? They don't exist independently. So, for example, let's say you're a tennis player, right? You play tennis. I don't play tennis, so I have no interest in this particular metaphor, but it's just an easy way of explaining it. Right? Your agency will affect your aspiration. If you're useless and you feel you can't hit the ball, you're not going to aspire to be a world champion, right? You don't believe you can do it, and so your sense of agency is going to affect your aspirations, and also your aspirations. If you really aspire to being a world champion, you're gonna have to work on your sense of agency, your belief that you can do it, right? Because if you don't actually believe and have the confidence that you can do it, you're not going to do it. So these things are entirely interdependent, right? They don't exist separately. Agency and aspirations, they're mutually reinforcing. Adaptability, right? This is again, it's like this is where you adjust you either learn or you act, right? I mean, that's the only way you can adapt, right? You actually have to, we'll see, you either change your model or you change what you do, right? Those are the only two ways you can do it, right? All of this gets modified in quite profound ways. We'll see this in the next module, by your internal state, right? How you're feeling, right? Are you in a generative, positive state where you can do things, or are you in a state of fear, right, and stress, or are you open? And it's actually quite a profound thing, and it's actually easier to change than we realize. Right? And that's what we're going to be focusing on the next area. And I don't want to go into this too much more at this level now, right? We can go into more definitions, maybe in module 3, as to more specific things. At the moment, I just want you to get these basic things of agency, aspirations, adaptability, and internal state, and that they all exist in one system. And they're not actually very different to each other. They overlap. And we'll see this and we'll explore this in more detail. Any questions, comments? Okay, you've heard enough from me. Let's do an exercise to try and bring this down to some practical level. So you intuitively, hopefully this makes a little bit more sense. I'm going to ask you in a minute. We're going to do an exercise. Oh, hold on. Oh dear. Where do I do this? Hold on. Sorry, I've got a thing. We're going to do an exercise called walking the plank. Right? It's what pirates used to do to each other. When somebody behaved badly, they'd be tied up and forced to walk along the plank to a brutal death. Right? The plank of wood here. Right? And here, there's not going to be no brutal deaths involved. This is the plank of wood, walking the plank. And we're going to do an exercise of imagination. Right? The kind of thing which I don't think dogs or bacteria can do. And I would like to ask you to close your eyes, just to sit back and relax and close your eyes. All right, this will take about 3 or 4 minutes, and I'll let you know when it's time to open your eyes. Just sit back and relax and just imagine that there is a plank of wood in your room. It's on the floor and it's got some bricks on either end. So it's a little bit off the floor. It's a bit raised off the floor. And I would like you to imagine that you walk across the room and you stand on the plank of wood and you walk along it. Just see yourself doing that. And now, imagine you're on top of a skyscraper somewhere, maybe in New York. And between you and the next skyscraper is a plank of wood. And your goal is to get to that other skyscraper by walking across that plank of wood. So imagine walking across that plank of wood. But don't look down. It's awfully high up there. But don't worry, if you find this difficult, help is at hand, because standing next to you is Wonder Woman or Superman. And I'd like you just to imagine that you pull Wonder Woman or Superman into your body and you take on all of their powers. And now you don't have to walk across that plank of wood. You can run and jump across to the next skyscraper. And why stop there? You can run across the top of that skyscraper and jump to the next one and run and fly across the skyline of New York. And you can also do some somersaults and turns and twists in the air, enjoying your new powers. And now come back to that plank of wood and walk across it to the neighboring skyscraper. Now you can open your eyes and come back. What happened? Any responses? Anything happened? Could you do the exercise? Terror, tension. And did you have the terror and the tension when you took Spider-Man or Superwoman into your into your body? I mean, many people, when they do this exercise, they literally, as you say, tear attention. They literally feel it physically, right? They feel it physically in their bodies, right? They can feel that they're, and then after Spider-Man or Superman or emerged, I felt relief. You changed your state, right? And once you change your state, right? Once you change your state through your imagination, the whole framing of the situation and your possibilities for action changed. All of a sudden, your agency, and I see there was a question from somebody said about
Charles.
Charles about could you explain more? Your sense of agency, your sense of belief in yourself, the sense that that you could do this, right? The possibilities that you envisaged changed because your state changed. Your aspirations changed. Now you're going to have fun and you're going to fly across the skyscrapers, right? Your adaptability changed, right? You could fly. So it's all about so you're I'm not saying that you I'm not saying that you that you should spend your life thinking you're Superman or Wonder Woman, well, why not? But rather that if you change your state, that part in the middle, your sense of agency, your sense that you are in control, you can do things, changes as well. So does your aspirations. So do the possibilities which are opened up to you. So managing your state is key to this framework. All right. So exactly. Then you begin to think of solutions once you get that confidence to manage and survive and win the game. You're no longer in that fear. So you're managing your internal state is absolutely critical. And communities have states, right? Systems have internal states. It's not just individuals. We all have these belief systems. Is this making any sense? I don't even know if anybody's there. I don't see any cameras on. I guess at least some of you are there. I okay. Yeah, oh, hello. Lovely to see you, Brigitte and Monique. Anyway, and lovely to imagine the rest of you. Carrying on. All right, and we'll take a break in about 10 minutes. Okay. Um, Again, we're just trying to frame this. So this framework of the agency, aspirations, and adaptability and internal state, it is cognitive in a sense, but it's based around deep processes. Your heart was beating. This is a physical, biological process when you were going to walk across the bridge, across the plank of wood. Yeah, this is physical. It's not just cognitive. And so your cognitive is not separate to your physical. We think it is, but it's not. Right? It's not connected to, right? You know, I'm sure many people have heard of the brain body or mind body connection, right? I think that's wrong. It's not connected. It's part of. They're the same thing, right? To be connected implies they're two separate things, right? Which must be connected. It's part of you, the whole thing. Um, Moving on. Let's say we're going to take a break in about 10 minutes. We've still got a lot to get through, right? Um, the tales from the frontiers of neuroscience, right? This is what we're going to do here, cover in the next few minutes. This is really quite. It's not my ideas, unfortunately. I wish they were. This is really our modern understanding of the way things work in terms of our brains, which is really at the cutting edge. And as I say, I don't take any credit for this, unfortunately. But this is the framework that I use, and I think it's astonishing that people have come up with this. It's from this man, Carl Friston, right? It's all based around his work. He's a scientist, a neuroscientist, one of the most renowned neuroscientists in the world. Many think he's the Einstein of our age, right? I mean, it's really he's a scientist, and he's basically, if he summarized all of his work in one sentence, it's this: all brains operate to minimize their uncertainty or surprise, i.e., information gap. Right? Surprise can be good or bad. You have a nasty surprise, but you can also have a nice surprise birthday party, right? It's just the information gap between their pre-existing model of the world, right? Model of the world and the world itself. And that is the basic operating principle for all learning, all action, all thoughts, everything that we do. Right? And we're going to explore this a little bit. He's the scientist. And there's also philosophers have also taken this and worked this out in more sort of like humanistic terms, and this is having profound impacts. This predictive processing theories in artificial intelligence, in psychiatry, in the social sciences, in psychology, in sociology. Even this is really this is. If you haven't heard of this before, you will be hearing about it, I think, over the next few years quite a lot. Here's a silly question, maybe. To understand our predictive brains, how would you know if you'd hit a tennis ball? Might sound like a stupid question, but how would you know? Go on, somebody shout out. You feel the racket. What else?
The ball goes away from you.
Sorry?
The ball moves to another direction.
How would you know the ball's moved to another direction?
You see it move?
You'd see it.
Mm.
It would bounce, but how would you know it bounced? You'd see it, right? The sound of it, the impact on the racket, right? It's all sensory. You hear, see, that's how we make sense of the world, right? I mean, we think that we see the world as it is, right? But our only access to the world is through our senses. That's how we know what's going on, right? And the brain, right? Our brain doesn't exist to do crosswords or attend UNDP workshops, right? We can do that, but it exists in order to keep us alive as part of the long process of life, right? And the way and what it has to do is it needs to function. We need to survive. We need to function in the external world, secure food, avoid being eaten by lions, right? Earn money, avoid getting fired, whatever. I mean, resources and threats have changed over time. And we make sense of the external world through our senses. But we also need to be able to measure our blood sugar level, our breathing, the internal state of our world, right? We do this through electrical, chemical, hormonal signals. Our brain manages internal relations within our body and the external world, right? It's based on sensory data, right? And we think, I know it's an obvious thing when you think about it, but this just isn't how we think we experience the world, right? We think we experience the world as it is, but what we're actually experiencing is sensory data, right? And so you could say that when you're aiming to hit the ball with the tennis racket, you're not actually aiming to hit the ball at all. What you're aiming to do is you're aiming to create the sensory data of the feel of the racket and the sound and seeing the ball going in this direction. Right? That's actually the way our brains work. It's astonishing stuff. Right? It's truly magnificent. Right? And the way this works it receives these signals is it builds models of the world. Right? In other words, when you go to a door and you open a door, you don't every single time have to go to the door and go, what's this? How does this work? You've got a model of what a door is and how it works. Right? And so your model of the internal and external world, it's almost like an offline version of the world. It's not maybe a great analogy. It develops and tests, and it tests through action, a model of the world, but not just the world, but it's my place in the world. Because remember, the purpose of the brain is to keep you alive, right? And so your model of the world is never of the world, it's the world according to you, as it's relevant to you, right? It's always subjective. You can't escape that. You never experience the world as it is. You experience your model of the world, right? And that provides a lot of opportunities. Can we say information gap causes perception? You've got it, Charles. You've got it. That's you've got it. That's what it is. It is perception. It's not just causes. That is what that is what perception is. All right. We'll come to that, but good. And our source of our models is our biological drivers and our experience, right, in the real world. So we don't experience the world as it is. We don't see the world as it is. What we experience is our model of the world. And our model of the world isn't just of tennis rackets and tennis balls and feelings. It's of our sense of beliefs, of our cognition, of our sense of possibilities in our agency, our adaptability, our planning skills, what our goals are. So that's what we experience, right? Is the whole package. It's not just a model of the world in terms of physical, it's a model of our sense of self, our possibilities, what we want to achieve. All of this, it kind of exists in our head, right? But we think, because our brain does this astonishing tricks, we think our experience is that, oh no, we're actually experiencing the world as it is. No, we can't be. All we can be experiencing is the sensory perceptions, right? This will be relevant, right, to our model, right? I hope you're seeing it already, right, about how powerful our models are. But before we take a break, I just okay, yeah, I just finish off this bit before. But I want to say a little bit more about our models, right? Is this making sense? Getting it? Nonsense? Gobbledygook? Our models, right? Just a few model characteristics. Do you remember we talked about our mindset? That it's both a mindset as a whole, but there's lots of different components. We don't have a model of the world, one model. Our model is contextual. So she'll be having one model for tennis, right? But there's an entirely different model when she's arguing with her kids or whatever, right? There's different senses of aspiration and agency will come together. So you might have agency in one area, but not in another area. It's completely contextual. So your world model is not one world model. It's lots of competing, often conflicting different world models. We're not aware of this, but if you think about it, you'll recognize it in yourself that you have conflicting desires, conflicting things. Shall I go to the party or shall I not? Right? It's always you've got competing world models, right? Which are coming there. So this is really important. Context is so important because the context that you're giving to something will determine which model you're bringing and your sense of agency and aspirations. It's dynamic. What I mean is, it's not just a set of memories, right? It's not just, your brain is about trying to keep you alive in the world. So your world model includes actions, right? In fact, your motor system, the movement of my arm or long-term planning is part of your model, right? It's not just a cognitive thing, it's integrated. And it can generate novel perceptions and actions. It can learn. It can come up with totally, I can say, it can come up with totally unique ways of doing things or thinking or whatever, which have never, yeah, it can come up with combinations of ideas or words or thoughts which are unique. So it generates new things, not just, well, when it works well, it generates new things, right? When it works badly, it just goes on autopilot. And this is really critical. It's hierarchical. It has deep beliefs, long-term beliefs, maybe religious beliefs, right? To the effects of me moving my arm to pick up this glass of water, right? It has all of these levels. And it's predictive, meaning that we don't know the future, right? We can't, our bodies can't know the future, right? So it's using the past to predict the future. Our models are really important. So in a sense, we have this model of the world, and our actions are merely testing our model against the world. Right? That's what our actions are. And before we take a break, right? Sorry, I kept you long enough. I just want to do one more slide, because within this context about hierarchical and dynamic, what this actually means. Right? I'm going to give an example. Yeah. We have different levels. So in the sensory level, right? Remember we talked about the brain makes sense of the world through physical things coming in. You have raw physical signals. So the lady, she felt the ball, the racket vibration. She saw, pixel, light came into her, onto her retina, right, etc. Sensory basic things, right? Meaningful objects, perceptual, right? So it's not just a sense of different of collection of physical things. We know that the lines are that these different things, we put them together and they mean something. It's not just a collection of vibrations and sounds. We put them together into, this is hitting a tennis ball. But then you could get up to much more higher or deeper levels. You start getting into goals and behaviors and systems. And then at your most basic level are your assumptions, right? Your deep-seated beliefs. Maybe gravity, things go down, not up. Beliefs in God or not. Social rules. People are nice, people aren't nice. Right? You've got all these different layers. And these provide the context, because these are in your, remember, it's your model for these. So what this means is, right, in your model, because you're actually experiencing your model of the world, this is providing all the context and the expectations for the interpretations of the raw physical signals. We don't experience the raw signals ourselves. We experience our predictions and expectations of the world, right? And these are what filter our raw physical signals. And the raw physical signals, right, of the ball hitting, of the racket hitting the ball, don't affect whether she wanted to become world champion. Right? It's the lower level has much more doesn't have as much impact on the higher level as the higher level has on the lower level, right? Because it's hierarchical. And you're predicting all of the way through. Your model is in charge. It's not this. Even though we think we experience the world as it is, it's this which is in charge. This is providing the context. So here, to put it another way, your priors, paradigms, expectations, right? Your underlying beliefs. We don't experience the world as it is. These filter out what we think is important in the world and give meaning to it. So this comment before about, is it perception, right? Yeah, we'll see that this is essentially the error, right? The gap between this and that is our perception. We'll see that. And what we're going to move on to in just, we'll take a break now, but we'll just say, just to frame the next thing is remember our brains operate to minimize their uncertainty or surprise, right? But the problem is, we've got a problem, Houston, right? Is that the world is inherently ambiguous. All right, look, is this a rabbit or a duck? It's both. All right, sensory signals coming in are sensory signals coming in. All right, there's ambiguity in the world and uncertainty in the world, and it's our brain which determines whether it's a duck or a rabbit. But it's both. Still lines on a piece of paper. We're going to take a break now, but if there's any quick questions, we can do this. We can take them now, but maybe we should wait until the break, after the break. 5 minutes if possible. Yeah. Let's see you back in 5 minutes.
And please stay on Zoom.
There was the question from Leila about how to increase the sense to improve our AAA. As I said, I mean, this is really for modules 2 and 3. We're getting more into practically how we can use this. This is really trying to explain a bit more about what the AAA is and where it comes from. But we are moving, but we will also, in the next few minutes, we will start to move in that direction. So where were we? We were here. We've got this problem that our world makes sense of, that we make sense of the world through our sensory data, but sensory data from the outside world is inherently ambiguous. All right? I mean, this is not a small little thing. And so it's our models which are in charge more than we think. We think we're all rational people and we see things objectively, and it's all the others who are stupid and don't see it our way. Generally, not a bit of it. Our models are as subjective as everybody else's. They might be more adaptive, but they're still subjective in their own way. And we're not talking about scientific knowledge here. We're talking about our world models. Science and how we make sense of things is a different topic. So the world is inherently ambiguous. The same data can have different meanings. And also, the same data or different data can have similar perceptions. What's this? What do you see here? Anybody want to make a guess? There's grass, and what's this? Grass. What are these things? Okay. Grass, but also wire mesh. A nice background for... Right? Context is key. All right. If I'm going for a walk in the woods in Sweden, right, and I see this, right, I'll probably think it's a stick. If I'm thinking if I'm going for a walk in, I don't know, wherever there's lots of snakes, right? I don't know, whatever, right? I'm probably like to think it's a snake because my prior expectation of the context literally determines the meaning I give to what it's, to sensory data I see. It's not the other way around, all right? And I just want to, and also remember, our brains are continuously trying to make sense. They don't want ambiguity. Our model is continuously testing itself against the sensory data. So look at this. Just stare at that image. It changes, huh? And you can't hold it. It will change. If you stare at it for 10 seconds, it will change. I've only ever done this with one person where they said it doesn't change, and he had been a boxer for many years. So he got a bit freaked out. Okay, I've got head injuries. So your brain is constantly testing its hypothesis against the incoming data, right? And you might go, yeah, so what? This is an optical illusion, but this is how it's happening at every microsecond. Right? And I just want to, I just need to just to do this. And I just want to show you as well, share sound. It's not just with our vision. Watch this video.
At any one moment, we are being bombarded by sensory information. Our brains do a remarkable job of making sense of it all. It seems easy enough to separate the sounds we hear from the sights we see. But there is one illusion that reveals this isn't always the case.
Ba, ba, ba.
Have a look at this. What do you hear?
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba.
But look what happens when we change the picture.
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba. Ba.
And yet, the sound hasn't changed. In every clip, you are only ever hearing ba with a B.
Ba, ba. Ba.
It's an illusion known as the McGurk effect.
Ba.
Take another look.
Ba.
Concentrate first on the right of the screen.
Ba.
Now to the left of the screen.
Ba.
The illusion occurs because what you are seeing clashes with what you are hearing.
Ba. In the illusion,
The point of this is, right, is again, our models, in this case, our vision, right? Our vision is overriding our auditory, right? It's happening again and again and again and again and again. Our brains are making sense of the world according to their pre-existing models of what lip movements are in this case, right? It's a very fundamental thing. And you might go again, so what? But the point is, this has consequences. Look at this. Lines and signals, just lines, colors and shapes, right? This is what we make sense of the world, sensory data. Put it together, that's where I'm from, the UK. So what? Well, the thing is, out of lines and shapes and colors, it has consequences, right? Because this flag means different things, right? For some people seeing who suffered from colonialism, right, this flag is something of oppression, right? For others, the far right in Britain, this is a symbol of pride. Okay, and we're making sense of this sensory data, but we're starting from, when I see a flag, normally when I don't live in the UK, when I'm back in the UK, if I see a flag outside somebody's house, I normally think, and this is my model, maybe I'm wrong, okay, there's some right wing, I don't know, not fascist, but there's somebody right-wing nationalist who's living there. I might be wrong, right? But that's my model when I see these shapes. And so this sound and lines, they're important, right? It's not just, oh, this is nice philosophical stuff. How we make sense of things is driven by our models. So here's where we start to move into, okay, how do we use this model, right? So because our models, right, again, I'm keep on saying this again and again and again, our models are in control of what we're seeing. It's not the other way around. We're not experiencing things as the way we think we are. But looking at adaptability, the key thing of this now where we're going is the importance of noticing and embracing uncertainty. All right, this, as somebody said it about the perception. So we've established that we have two things going on. We have our prior beliefs and expectations about the world will lead us to immediate sensory predictions, right? You know, I know that if I lift my foot and move it forward, I expect to feel this thing, you know, my weight move and my foot on the ground as I move forward. The lady with the tennis racket, she goes like this, she plans it, and she expects her prior beliefs about what she knows about tennis, etc., is she expects to feel a certain vibration in her wrist and to see certain light patterns on her retina, right? So your prior beliefs provide immediate sensory predictions for the context. Right? Whereas when the lady with the tennis player is cooking dinner, she doesn't expect to feel the racket, right? It's contextual. And so your prior beliefs provide a context which then provide immediate sensory predictions. And when the sensory data coming in from the world matches your expectation, the model is strengthened and reinforced. But when it doesn't, right, there's a mismatch. You've got an error between the prediction and the real world or the sensory data coming in. And there you've got uncertainty. Right? And as we've seen, all brains are operating to minimize their uncertainty or surprise. Where here is the scope for innovation? There isn't one, because the world and your existing way of seeing things, doing things is just being confirmed. All that's happening is your data is just reinforcing your model, which is exactly the opposite of innovation, right? Whereas here, it's exactly this prediction error, but the difference between your model and the world, which opens up the space for innovation. Without this prediction error, there's no possibility of innovating, doing something differently. Right? It might sound obvious, but it's important. And so with this adaptability, there's two options when you've got a prediction error. You can change the model, you can learn, or you can change the world through action. Right? What does this mean? Let's use a stupid example, a trivial example, right, to demonstrate what this means. Let's say my world model, right, is that there are always apples on my kitchen table, right? And I come in one morning and there aren't any. What can I do about that? There's an uncertainty, there's a prediction error, right? My model, my prediction is that there are always apples on my table and there aren't any apples on the table. What can I do to resolve that? Go on, give it a go, somebody. Buy some apples. Yeah, get an apple. Exactly. It's two things. You can update your model There are sometimes apples on my kitchen table. Now you haven't got a prediction error. It fits with your model, right? Learn, or you can put some apples on the table, right? Everything is in the surface adapting, right? Everything is in the service of learning, updating your model, which means updating your model, or action, right? Or you can learn to do without them for the day, right? But okay, so then you have to update your model, right? And so learning and action we think of as two separate things, right? Traditionally, right? I mean, that's how we think of learning and action. Learning is something I learn here, and action is something I do. Actually, the way our brains work is exactly the same thing. They're two sides of the same coin. They're both in the service of resolving prediction errors. So learning and action are they're so tightly intertwined, right? And if you want to innovate, it by definition it involves learning and action, right? And that can only occur through error prediction, right? When there's an uncertainty to be resolved, right? And there's a third option: ignore the data, right? And what happens if you ignore the data? So you don't note, maybe you're searching for your keys, right? So you don't notice there are no apples on the table, right? If you don't notice there are apples on the table, then what happens? Well, there's no prediction error to resolve. You haven't created a prediction error in your perception, right? Because you haven't noticed it, but your brain has noticed it, right? Your brain has the cocktail party effect, it's called. You're at a party and you're having a conversation, and then all of a sudden you hear your name mentioned somewhere across the room, right? And you suddenly pay attention to it, right? Our brain is continuously scoping, and it sees and hears much more than it brings to our awareness, right? And I bet you that many of you, if you pay attention to it, you can hear maybe your computer clicking, or maybe there's traffic in the background, right? Or there's kids playing outside, right? I'm sure there's all sorts of things even going on now that you're filtering out because it's not considered relevant. Your brain is not considering it relevant to the context, which is this workshop, right? And so the context that you give to something is important for what you notice, right? And we're nearly done with this. We're going to have discussions in just a minute, right? So ignore the data. There's no prediction error, right? And without a prediction error, there's all you do is just carry on. One day looks like the next, right? So what you pay attention to is key, absolutely key, because it's the one resource we have. This is all we have, is what we pay attention to, right? And in terms of our brain is continuously weighting what it thinks. If you look around your room, just look around your room. There's billions and billions of little things that you could pay attention to. Colors, pixels, and even just in your immediate environment. That's and then if you think about the price of coffee in Ethiopia, or I don't know, or the meaning of life, or whatever, even in your room, there's billions of things you can pay attention to, right? And then there's all this other things. So what you pay attention to is key, and your brain is going, is this information, or what information out of all the things going on is relevant to this context for this task, right? In other words, if you're looking for your keys, whether there are apples on the table is not important, right? So the context that you give to something is critical to what you notice. Going back to this, so where are you paying attention to? All right, where is your attention going? Right, you're going on your day-to-day basis, on your day-to-day life. What are you paying attention to? Where is your attention going? Are you really thinking about these priors and questioning these things which, when you change here, you get innovation throughout the system, right? Or are you just concentrating on whether you're hungry, or whether, you know, this day-to-day stuff, or are you also putting attention onto what the underlying assumptions are, what your paradigms are? Because that's where the real change and innovation can occur, when you have changes here. Because your brain doesn't really care whether it's a rabbit or a duck, right? It doesn't really matter, but it matters a lot about your deep belief systems, right? And that's where the change happens. So we operate according to this hierarchy. So we're coming to the end of here. This is kind of where we are. We're going to come to some questions in a bit, right? So basically, this is what we've done. We've in this module, we've looked at the AAA framework, AAA plus framework. Not just here's the framework and this is how you use it, but we've tried to locate it in a deep understanding of nature, biology, how we actually work. Because once we understand more about how we work at a deep level, this gives us the leverage to actually change it. All right. I mean, this is what provides us with the tools and the paths and the entry points to actually make changes. I could have just said, okay, that's it. Agency, adaptability, aspirations, internal state. Here are 20 tools that we can use. But it goes deeper than this. It's about how we make sense of the world, because once we understand how we make sense of the world, then we have more options. Internal state is what we're coming to next week. All right, this here, we haven't really talked about it. We did this exercise, right, with the Superman, Wonder Woman, but it's obviously more complex than that, right, and more nuanced, and that's what we're going to be exploring. Because it's not just about Superman or Wonder Woman. It's all about motivation, not motivation, whether you've got energy, not energy, etc., etc. And then in module 3, that's where we start getting into exploring a little bit more about what these things actually are, right, in more detail. So the main thing from today, where are the prediction errors, right? If you want change in the world, all right, you've got to be creating some kind of errors which you can then fix or innovate. Because if you just see the world as your model, or you just see your model and you don't know anything different about your model, then nothing's going to change. You're not going to adapt, all right? And we all know people like that, right? All they see is what they think they're going to see, and hear is what they think they're going to hear. That's natural. But us as innovators, particularly social innovators, we need to look for the opposite of what we know, not just use our professional expertise to reinforce what we know, unless it's working already. Questions, comments, feedback. We've got like 10 minutes or so for that. Rather surprisingly, we've got I normally don't have enough time at the end, but hey. Any questions, comments, discussion points? And if anybody wants to go into something in more detail than we can do in the next 10 minutes, I'm happy to stay online for 20 minutes or so afterwards if we want to, you know, if anybody has the time to explore something in more detail. But just jump in. Please jump in. Yeah, Bridget.
Thank you, Ben. That was very, very effective learning, very interesting background. And something that comes to my mind is when we focus on innovations, it feels sometimes that we take for granted that we've understood what works. And I just wonder what's the space for just confirming the things that work well before jumping on an innovation. Like I'm thinking out loud, I'm not very articulated,
No.
but what I mean to say is that I feel sometimes that we jump into there must be a different way of doing something without having had an appreciation that some things work but something don't. And that's I just feel like we focus on the part that doesn't work without really having asserted that there's a part that works. And I'm projecting myself in innovations, in a professional context.
Let me try and answer or begin to answer that. It's the perfect question, huh? Let me just look for. Sorry, just give me a second. Are you familiar with this? The exploitative v explorative. Right? I mean,
No.
this comes from it's a basic theory in biology, in psychology, or whatever. And it's this notion, it comes from foraging theory, right, in biology, from animals, right? Do you explore the patch? If you're a squirrel, right, or a lion or whatever, do you exploit what your existing area, or do you explore your new areas? And it's if you've got friends coming over and you're going to go to a restaurant, do you go to your favorite restaurant, which you know what you're going to get, right? You exploit what you already know, or do you explore a new restaurant? And it might be great, but it might be awful, right? And so there's this constant balance between exploitative and explorative, right? Knowledge, right? And the innovation space is here, right? Or reorganizing that. And that's not to say, I totally agree with you. It's not to say that that everything good is here. If it's working, it's working, it's working, it's working. Of course, working within what paradigm, right? I mean, different paradigms will determine what you think is effective or not, right? So, and it's about being able to do both. All right. And it's about being able to, I think, agree with you. It's not about only this innovate just for the sake of it being sexy and this is something we do. It's about being able to know when you need to be doing this and when you need to be doing that. And, the lion or the squirrel might be doing very, very, very well at one point, right? But then all of a sudden there's a drought, right? Or the situation changes, and they will wish that they had already explored new stuff as well to give more options. So I'm not saying it's about only innovation is the only good thing, right? It's about being able to move between these two things. And and I think it's fair to say is that in our professional expertise, people generally revolve around this and not around that, right? But it's not one or the other. It's about one. It's about one or both. And you see this in companies, right? It's sort of like that a product was great until all of a sudden it wasn't great, right? And then they wish they'd had some curiosity. So I'm really not trying to give the message this is the only thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I often find it's a this or that, as opposed to The example of the restaurant, for example, what would have come to my mind is that I may go to a new restaurant, but with the knowledge that there's some vegetarians and gluten-free people, and so there will be something of what works that will get there, and it's not just, oh, you know, it's an old restaurant that I know, or it's a new one. So I see it as a continuum, but it's not often described this way.
I will if you send, you'll have to do it. I won't do this otherwise, but if you either contact me in LinkedIn or send me an email about this, I will send you an article on this, right?
Okay,
because it's
perfect.
all about timing as well, and about the balancing, and there's a lot of academic research as to on this model as to how you do it.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks.
Julien, you have a question.
Yes. Hi, Ben. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So if innovation happens in the gap or at the moment of prediction error, then maybe the key is learning to pause before defending the old model. So we know innovation requires balancing the exploitative, what we already know and do.
I'm sorry, I'm not really catching you. There's distortion on the sound.
Okay, give me a.
That's better. No, that sounded good. That was good. Hello?
Yeah, I was trying to fix the mic. Can you hear me better there?
Yes.
Great. No, I was just saying that if innovation happens in the gap and in the moment of prediction error, and maybe the key is to learning to pause before defending the old model. So how we balance that innovation requires exploitative, which means that what we already know and do, and with explorative, that is what we don't know yet. That means cultivating curiosity. But the real question, it will be that what concrete practices or incentives or cultural norms can we put in place so that people feel safe and supported and to stay in the gap long enough to new possibilities to emerge? I mean, how we can make this search of a space for innovation more mainstream, how we can bring people or decision makers into this, because sometimes I feel like it's only some of us trying to find these innovation models. Maybe changes can happen bottom up, but in a systemic way, how we can address a systemic change coming from the real people that is in charge, that is making this happen.
I think this is an excellent point. Absolutely. On the one hand, let me answer this I'm not sure I can give you an entirely satisfactory answer, right? I mean, this is like this is a big question.
Yeah, in 3 minutes.
Right, and three things I'd say actually. First thing is, as well, if you contact me, then I can also send you this paper a little bit about this difference between like exploitative and explorative, and how when one becomes, it's interesting, the background as to when one's more relevant than the other. In terms of the individual psychological mindset, and remember, that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about innovation as a process, right? As an organizational process. Absolutely critical, but it's just not this workshop, right? We have 6 hours together. We can't do the whole thing. Here we're focusing on mindset, not systems around it. Okay. I'm not saying the mindset is they're exclusive, but I think that that we'll see that next week that in terms of mindset, that the internal state is critical. All right, how you are yourself. When it comes to teams and organizational culture, what you will be doing is you're essentially looking at incentives and how you work, etc., the framework around it. Essentially, all that is about trying to create the internal state, all right, where people are feeling confident, generative, positive, innovative, because they can live and breathe and walk into that prediction era. All right, so in a sense, like at the organizational level, all you're trying to do, remember I said earlier on that that this is here, right? You could also say teams, right? I mean, it's anything, right? And so it will all be about, those incentives are all about trying to create the inner space and the agency and internal state of the team to be more creative and innovative, right? But it's a little bit beyond the scope of this workshop, but we'll touch on it, right? More on module 3. Okay, but I get where you're going. Anything else? Any other? Oh, there was a question about can you say something about AI in relation? I say a lot about it, about the relation to AI in the topic today. It's one of my real interests. AI has essentially become is large language models like ChatGPT. They are just prediction errors, basically. They're massively brilliant. I mean, they are really, I mean, let's face it, I'm now brilliant, right? Predictions of the next word, right? Statistical predictions, right? U comes after Q in English. It's essentially, that's what it does. But AI is, the problem is that AI doesn't experience the world, all right? And we make sense of the world not just through language, which is what ChatGPT does, right? And these other things. We're embedded in the world. Remember this, the embodied, embedded, inactive, right? And AI is exactly the opposite of that. It doesn't experience the consequences of its action. It doesn't get feedback, right? Whereas the whole point of humans is that we get feedback from the world because we interact with the world, right? And so our knowledge isn't theoretical like large language models. It's enacted. It comes from, and it only makes sense with our in terms of our interaction with the world. And so, yeah, it's a fundamental limitation of AI, and that AI is becoming entirely divorced from the living experience, right? Or intelligence is becoming divorced from our living experience. And so I think that this is a huge message here, right? I mean, I'd love to do another thing on this. It's an important discussion which is starting. I think biological intelligence is what we're talking about, is not artificial intelligence, and they are not the same thing, right? But Carl Friston, who we talked about, he actually is the chief scientific of an AI company, chief scientific officer, which is trying to do exactly the opposite of that and build artificial intelligence systems which actually enact in the world in terms of experience the consequences of their actions rather than just being value free. But that's a whole nother topic. If you're interested, it's called Versus.ai, the company, and it's big. It's going to come. Sorry, very quick. That was a very quick answer. Can you say something about the AI, the model with error prediction, AAA model with error prediction? If I think I'm my agency, if I think, let's say you have to, you've got to, you're doing a public speaking engagement and you hate public speaking, and it's one of the big fears that people have in the world, right? People who don't fear it don't understand it, but it's a massive issue for many people. So you think that people are going to find you boring, right? And so you go into a room and you'll see people who are quiet, and you will get feedback that, oh God, everybody's finding me boring, right? You will see what you want to see, right? You will have already predicted that the room is going to find me boring, right? Or the room is going to think I'm talking nonsense. And sure enough, that is how you will interpret people shifting in their seat or sitting there quietly. Whereas it might well be it's just curiosity, right? And so you have to look for the counterfactuals, right? And we're going to get this into this in module 2. Module 2 is really important, right? I think module 1 is as well, but module 2 is it's like you need to be in the state where you're noticing the prediction errors at whatever level, in terms of your sense of your model of yourself, your agency. You need to be going, well, actually, I don't know what this data means, right? A bit more explorative. With the aspirations, it's like, okay, so these are my aspirations, and the feedback I'm getting from the world, right? My aspiration is I'm going to be the world tennis champion. Well, I'm not, right? I'm still playing with my local club down the road, right? You've got a prediction error there, right? And that then provide, at your aspiration level. And so you have to start thinking, well, where's the problem here? Is it my agency, my sense of belief, or is it my strategy, my adaptability? Am I not learning how to play tennis properly? Or am I just not playing the right matches, for example, right? So what it's saying is that any problem or any challenge, ultimately, it can only be agency, adaptability, or aspiration. That's all it can be, or internal state, right? It's always going to be one of those things, right? And if something isn't working, say you're feeling stressed, you've got an error prediction, right? You've got something, presumably you don't aspire to be stressed, but you are being stressed. So you're focusing, okay, so my feeling of stress is my reaction to this error prediction, right? To this thing which isn't working. So how do I deal with that? But we're going to try to go into this a little bit more in the next two modules. And I like it, of course, when people ask questions where it's already predicting where we're going, because that means it's somehow making sense there. I think we've come to the end of the time, yeah. But look, if anybody has any more specific questions on anything or wants to go into more detail, right, I'm willing to hang around for next 20 minutes or so if somebody has the time or the interest to share ideas. I learn from this every time I do this as well, right? I see this as a interactive thing, even though I've talked a lot. And also, please feel free to contact me and ask, email or LinkedIn. I believe in this stuff. It's not just an intellectual thing for me. It's like, and I'm interested to explore perspectives, how we can all learn together and move on. So it's up to you. Okay, over to you, Alexandra.
Thank you, Ben, for this very informative and great session. And also thank you to everyone for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next week. We'll be sending the recording of the session by email, and as well a link where you will be able to sign up in case you are interested in the coaching sessions. So there will be a limited number of spaces for them. But if there is something that you would like, to explore on a one-to-one basis with Ben, anything related, it could be something related to time management, or as Ben said, public speaking, because that comes up very often, or anything related to explore more some of the theoretical and some of the more practical exercise from this workshop, that would be the space for you to do it on a one-to-one basis. And I leave today's session with many learnings, but one powerful thing that's we don't see the world as it is, we see our model of the world. And I think it's really, really powerful. And I think on one hand, it's very obvious, but on the other hand, like when we think about it, yeah, we don't often think about this. We make assumptions that we see the world as it is, and we don't. So thank you again. And as Ben mentioned, for those of you who would like to stay a couple of minutes longer, if you have any additional questions, I noted that there was one question in the chat from Helman, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, which was not addressed. Otherwise, we can also address it in the next sessions. So thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, afternoon, evening, depending where you're joining us from. See you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.